Arrived in Hong Kong. They are the Chinese nationals. According to the updated information, we have around 106 passengers from Japan arrived in Hong Kong this morning. So the original plan is the flight took off around 1:45, but according to our latest information, it's 3 hours delay and arrived in Hong Kong this morning around 4:50 a.m. local time. So these are the group of the Chinese nationals, including the Hong Kong residents and also the residents from Macau. They all passes the tests, the PCR test, also the nucleic acid tests, and shows the negative results. And also they not have a close contacts with the confirmed cases, so they were allowed to disembark the cruise. So the Hong Kong HKSAR government sent 2 chartered flights to Japan to pick up the Hong Kong residents and also the people holding Hong Kong passport, the permanent Hong Kong residents, and also the Hong Kong people holding international passports. And also believe we have the residents from Macau on board as well. Just right before the live streaming started, the Hong Kong medical team also conducted a onboard checking, so you still can see the medics wearing the goggles, the face shield, the protective suits. So we can see after the passengers finish the health check, right now you can see the passengers getting off the plane, and they were all on a bus. That bus also prepared by the Hong Kong HKSAR government, dedicated for the passengers from the cruise arrived in Hong Kong. So for these group of passengers, they already in the quarantine in the cruise for 14 days. You can see they a little bit tired. It's quite a hard time for them. And we can see so far the passengers we saw is in 60s or 70s. So we talk about the people allowed to get off the cruise. they should pass all the tests. That's actually for the passengers didn't know the results, and no one told them. But the thing is, like, no one told them the test results means they passed the results. That's the interview according to the passengers getting off the cruise. Because if the test results was positive, then they already been transported to the local hospitals in Japan. And also they have shown no symptoms during the quarantine period, such as fever, coughing, or fatigue. So that's the common symptoms of COVID-19. And also these people should obtain a certificate, or that's the means you are good to go to leave the cruise. That's also issued by the Ministry of Health of Japan. So this time, actually, the confirmed cases on the Princess Cruise involved people, the passengers from around 50 countries and regions. That is also why it caused a global attention to the cruise. So this is the first charter flight arrived in Hong Kong. According to our knowledge, the Hong Kong government actually sent 2 charter flights. So the second charter flight will take off from Japan, also the Haneda airport, and will arrive in Hong Kong as well. So for Hong Kong government, according to the press conference given by Executive Carrie Lam, the Hong Kong government sent 2 specific working teams to Japan to coordinate the living of the Hong Kong residents and also the Chinese nationals. So that involved a cross-functional team, including the hospital authorities, the health department, and also immigration department. So for this group of passengers that arrived in Hong Kong, they're finally back home, but they cannot really go back to their home yet. They still need to in a place for additional 14 days in quarantine. So we can see right now one bus is finished all the checking, and can see still they are very happy. They're waving their hands. A little bit released, I can say that, because after all 14 days quarantine in the cruise, they're saying like it's like in the prison. So right now, finally, they got back to Hong Kong. So according to the information, today we have around 106 Chinese nationals arrived in Hong Kong. And this is the first charter flight arrived in Hong Kong. We will have another charter flight from Japan to Hong Kong this evening. So we talk about the only passengers who have tested negative for the virus and did not show any symptoms during the quarantine period will be allowed to leave the ship. And also, of course, they should holding a pass or a certificate that issued by the Ministry of Health of Japan, so they are allowed to leave. Talking about the disembarking process that started yesterday, the Japanese authorities hope that the whole process can be finished within 3 days. So it's expected to finish everything tomorrow. So talking about the numbers of infected guests on the cruise, the number as of yesterday, or the yesterday, according to our knowledge, the confirmed cases of Chinese nationals 47, 2 from Chinese mainland, 44 from Hong Kong HKSAR, one from Taiwan. And the Chinese embassies in Japan picked up the first group of Chinese nationals off the cruise 6 p.m. the local time of Japan. And also you can see this first group of the guests arrived in Hong Kong. The numbers actually keep changing. According to our earliest knowledge, the Chinese embassy in Japan picked up 50 patients, 50 nationals from the cruise. But according to our knowledge, right now we have around 106 guests from the cruise as Chinese nationals arrived in Hong Kong. As of February 18th, 542 confirmed cases found on the cruise. That's the total number. So the Japanese officials conducted the health check on the 2,404 passengers and crew. So out of which 542 are confirmed COVID-19, with the infection rate as high as 14. That's the 14.6%. So you can see this is the second batch of passengers getting off the plane. So before they getting off the plane, they also finish another round of health check conducted by the Hong Kong authorities on board. So this actually require a joint efforts. We're talking about Hong Kong HKSAR government sent the first working group on 16th. That's with a group of 30 people. So that's from Hong Kong Immigration Department, the Health Authority, the Hospital Authority, and their goal is to help to arrange the charter flights and get the Chinese nationals off the cruise and take on the airplane back to Hong Kong. And the charter flights for the passengers are for free. So talking about the working group sent by Hong Kong HKSAR government, that also including the medics. So as long as there is need for the medical support, the Hong Kong medics also can give support. So this is actually a close coordination that requires Hong Kong HKSAR government and also with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of PRC, the Chinese embassy in Japan. It's not an easy job because based on our knowledge, the number actually keep changing, and they actually require a lot of work behind all these free charter flight service. And we also talk about you need to also arrange the specific buses for the patients, for the passengers. So you can see from the 50, that's the passengers we got originally for the first charter flight, but right now you can see we have 106. So this is number more than doubled. That also reflects the hard work made by the authorities from Hong Kong HKSAR, from mainland China, and also in Japan. So as of today, according to the press conference made by the Hong Kong government, the confirmed cases of Hong Kong nationals, the Hong Kong residents on the cruise from 44, that's the number yesterday, right now increased to 55. And also we have another 30 Hong Kong residents are close contacts, which means there's around 80 to 90 people. They cannot get on these two charter flights back to Hong Kong because they need to stay in Japan for further quarantine or for treatment. So we talk about as of February 18th, the confirmed cases are 542. Among these number of patients coming from 25 countries and regions. So 247 from Japan, 77 from United States, and we talk about the numbers of Chinese nationals, 24 from mainland China, you can see we have the second group of passengers getting off the flight, and they have a name card in front of them. I believe that is a name card that should be with them also later on when they are in 14 days quarantine. So they all have that name card with them, so the authorities know exactly who they are and where they sat on the flight and how to arrange them to the quarantine locations. So also have the ground staff supporting them to sit inside. I believe that's also with a special arrangement. So make sure they not have a possibility of cross infection. So right now you are looking at is the first charter flight arrived in Hong Kong. So the government of China's Hong Kong Special Administrative Region dispatched 2 charter flights to evacuate Chinese passengers on board the Diamond Prince cruise ship to Hong Kong. So the first charter flight departed Tokyo's Haneda airport at around 4:45 a.m. Hong Kong time or 3:45 a.m. local time. So you can see right now the ground staff and also the medics on board, they will protect themselves. Look at the protective suits, goggles, face shield, masks. Around 500 passengers from the Diamond Princess cruise ship who have tested negative for the novel coronavirus disembarked on Wednesday morning in Japan's Yokohama city. So the cruise ship was put on a 2-week quarantine that's due to end on Wednesday. So among all the passengers, at least 247 Japanese passengers aboard the Diamond Princess were diagnosed with COVID-19. So a total of 542 COVID-19 cases from 25 countries and regions were confirmed on the ship. And this is the number as of February 18th. So you look at the passengers, still we see we have some young kids, but majority are still the elderly or senior people. So the passengers over the age of 50 accounted for 86.5% of all who tested positive for the virus. And we talk about for the population on the cruise of more than 1,000 passengers with age above 70s. So the whole process of getting off the charter flight takes some time because still the passengers inside need to go through a whole set of health check. And we can see the bus. This is bus number 3, and you can see the passengers off the flight and not sit really closely to each other. So we have leave a lot of space in between. Let's also make sure no additional or possible infections happened inside the bus. So they are not back home. They heading to a quarantine place for additional 14 days. So we can see the Hong Kong ground staff have quite protective measures. Also, you can see the bus drivers also with the protective suits, goggles, masks. You can see this is the medics on board and also equipped from head to toe and also with face shield. So talking about the whole issues of the Diamond Princess cruise. So back on January 21st, cruise ship left from Shekou port in Shenzhen City, as the south part of China, Guangdong province. And the news of the novel coronavirus pneumonia in Wuhan not really bothered the passengers on board because they quite enjoyed their vacation because it's a time for people to celebrate the Chinese New Year. And right now we see, I believe this is the 3rd group of passengers finished the health check on board and right now getting off the bus. And they will get on the bus number 4. And you can see with each passenger, they have their name card with them. So the officials know exactly who they are and where they sat on the plane. And if they had any symptoms showed later on, the officials will know exactly where they sat on the plane, who sat next to them, who were the close contacts on the plane. So still you can see people, they quite tired because they stay in quarantine in the cruise for 2 weeks. But finally, they right now back home. Of course, they cannot go directly to their own homes, apartments. They still need to be in a specific place for the 14-day additional quarantine period. So we look at right now, the people still quite relieved, and that's a very good sign. So talking about the whole cases, the things changed on January 23rd after Wuhan shut down all the public transport over the outbreak, and the cruise crew began to wear masks. And in the afternoon of January 25th, the cruise broadcast the disembarkation may be delayed and all passengers might require quarantine after the disembarkation. So the cases with COVID-19 actually on board of the cruise on January 20th and disembarked cruise on January 25th and confirmed COVID-19 on February the 1st. As of February 4th, all passengers have been told that they should be in the quarantine in the cruise. You can see the passengers right now. This is the new group from the airplane, and they right now got on the bus number 4. They now sit really close to each other, and we also have ground staff to arrange them where to sit. And on board the first charter flight is 106 passengers from the Diamond Prince cruise. And they will be in quarantine place for another 14 days. The quarantine place is around a 1 hour driving time. So you can see the passengers will start from here heading to the quarantine place and stay there for another 14 days. So right now is local time 9:16 a.m. The flight took off from Haneda Airport of Japan around 4:45 a.m. Hong Kong time, arrived in Hong Kong around 8:30 a.m. After the flight touched down in Hong Kong, the ground staff, the medics, got on board for the health check. And you can see the passengers got off the airplane in different batches. So in a quite orderly way. So according to the Japan's health ministry, and they conducted the health check on 311 guests and crew members on the cruise, and 621 patients are confirmed. And yesterday, the newly confirmed cases is 79, and out of which 68 actually show no symptoms. So right now, the total number of confirmed cases on the Diamond cruise ship is around 621. We don't know exactly how many people from Japan, from United States. So this is the newly updated number. So according to the Japanese officials, 621 cases were confirmed on the Diamond Princess cruise. And the newly confirmed cases as of February 19th is 79, and out of which 68 are asymptomatic carriers. And right now we see the new group of passengers getting off the plane. This is a first charter flight dispatched by the Hong Kong HKSAR government. And we will also see the second charter flight from Japan arrived in Hong Kong this evening. Around 106 passengers on board and arrived in Hong Kong this morning at around 8:30 a.m. local time. 15 places. That's around a 1 hour drive. So talking about the updated number, the Japanese health authorities conducted the health check on 3,011 people on the cruise, out of which 621 confirmed COVID-19. So the newly reported number yesterday, which is February 19th, is 79, and 68 out of that 79 cases were shown no symptoms. So Japan right now also with a large number of confirmed cases as of yesterday, February 19th. The total number up to 695 confirmed cases of COVID-19, out of which 621 are the confirmed cases from the cruise. So that's the confirmed cases right now up from 542. That's the number we got on February 18th. And right now up to 621. We don't know exactly the countries and regions for that 621 cases, but a total of 542 COVID-19 cases from 25 countries and regions. So that 542 are the confirmed cases on the Diamond Princess cruise ship. And started from Wednesday, around 500 passengers began leaving the ship, while over 2,000 passengers and crew members remain. The ship has been quarantined since February the 5th, after one passenger who disembarked earlier in Hong Kong was found infected with the new coronavirus. So that confirmed cases was on the cruise from January 20th and embarked on the January 25th and confirmed in Hong Kong as COVID-19 patients on February 1st, and the whole cruise has been quarantined since February the 5th. And yesterday actually is the last day of 2-week quarantine, and the Japanese officials so start to allow the passengers that's negative in their tests and showed no symptoms during the quarantine time period, and also with a certificate that can consider as a pass issued by the Japanese authorities, allow them to leave the cruise. Right now we see another batch of passengers finish all the health check and getting off the plane. So the government of Hong Kong SAR dispatched 2 charter flights to evacuate Chinese passengers on board the Diamond Prince cruise ship to Hong Kong. So you can see this is the first charter flight from Haneda Airport, arrived in Hong Kong with 106 passengers on board. We also expect the second charter flight will take off this evening and arrive in Hong Kong later today or earlier tomorrow. And at Tuesday's press briefing, Executive Carrie Lam said the Hong Kong government sent 2 charter flights to Tokyo on Wednesday to bring back 352 of its residents currently under quarantine aboard Diamond Princess in Japan back to Hong Kong. And the evacuees will also need to undergo a 2-week compulsory quarantine at a quarantine center upon their arrival in Hong Kong. And according to the Chinese embassy in Japan, 47 Chinese nationals confirmed COVID-19 as on the Diamond Princess cruise. So started from February 5th to February 19th. That's the quarantine time period. The more than 3,000 guests and crew members were required to stay on the cruise for a 14-day medical observation. And based on the information on the February the 5th, there were 312 Chinese nationals, 261 from Hong Kong, 5 from Macau SAR, and 25 from Chinese Taiwan, and 21 from Chinese mainland. As of February 18th, the Ministry of Health finished the health check on 2,404 passengers and crew members on board, and 542 people were confirmed with COVID-19. And right now this number increased to 621. This is the newly reported number according to the Japanese officials. And as of February 19th, 47 Chinese nationals were confirmed COVID-19, 2 from Chinese mainland, 44 from Hong Kong, and 1 from Chinese Taiwan. According to this morning's press conference in Hong Kong, I believe right now is around 55 Hong Kong residents with COVID-19, and around 30 were identified as close contacts. Around 80 Hong Kong residents right now still remain in Japan for further quarantine or for treatment. So right now we can see a new group of passengers finish all the health check and getting off the plane. So we talk about only passengers who have tested negative for the virus and did not show any symptoms during the quarantine period will be allowed to leave the ship. And those who have tested negative but were in cabins with infected people will have to remain on board for additional quarantine. And also we can see the medics on board also use the portable thermometers to take the temperature of the passengers. So the passengers getting off the plane and also get on the bus, and this bus is dedicated for transporting the passengers directly to the quarantine place. And we'll also make sure the passengers from Japan has less exposure to the public in Hong Kong. So that is why we can see they just right from the airplane to the quarantine place. And we can see right now this is bus number 7. So they will also send the passengers to the quarantine places. That's around 1 hour drive. So we talk about the quarantine period on the cruise that started from February the 5th. So before the end of the quarantine, speculations that the virus could be transmitted through the air ventilation system circulated among passengers and the crew members. But according to the people familiar with the matter, the structural design of the ship may have played a key role in expediting the spread of the virus, and said that each cabin is isolated and escape tracks installed on the doors inside them are the only accommodations designed to ventilate the sealed cabins. So still right now the investigation is undergoing to find out why the number of confirmed cases increased so fast. But the expert, especially the epidemiologists, said that the air ventilation or the whole environment on the cruise actually are a perfect place for spreading the virus. It's still in a closed off environment. And also the cabins stay quite close to each other and also provide a quite high possibility of cross infection. And according to the World Health Organization's health emergency program, Dr. Michael Ryan saying that there are sometimes environments in which disease can spread in a more efficient way. And the cruise ship in particular were known to occasionally accelerate spread. Right now you are looking at this is a live picture coming to you from Hong Kong International Airport. You can see the additional group of passengers finishing all the health check, getting off the plane, heading directly to the buses, and the bus will take them directly to the quarantine place for another 2-week quarantine in Hong Kong. And we can see in the bus, the passengers actually sit from the middle and to the end of the bus. So they leave the whole places at the front empty. I believe that's maybe also a way to protect the drivers as well. But you can see the drivers actually also well protected, wearing the masks, the protective suits, gloves, and the goggles. And this is bus number 8. All the buses will take the passengers from the Diamond Prince cruise to the quarantine place in the new territories in Hong Kong. So we talk about the passengers on the Diamond Prince cruise. The above 60 years old accounted for 80.4%. 1,007 passengers aged from 70 to 80 years old, and 215 passengers aged from 80 to 90 years old, and 11 passengers over 90 years old. So you can see more than 1,200 passengers aged above 70 years old. So they're also saying another reason is because the senior people, many of them with underlying or chronic diseases, and also from the coverage by the Japanese media outlet, the Japanese citizens, the guests on the cruise also raised the Japanese flag. Writing on the flag is short of medicine. So also started from last week, from February the 14th, the Japanese authorities allowed the senior guests on the cruise getting off the cruise and sending them to the hospitals or accommodations in Saitama City or Hikari City nearby for them to take the medicines. Right now you're looking at this is the 106 passengers from the Diamond cruise arrived in Hong Kong, and according to the Hong Kong authorities, the Hong Kong HKSAR government arranged 8 buses. So you can see this is bus number 8, which means this is the last bus to take all the first group of passengers arrived in Hong Kong to the quarantine places in the new territories. So there are around 106 passengers from the Diamond cruise arrived in Hong Kong, and we also expect another charter flight arrived in Hong Kong later today. So this is bus number 8. So this is the last bus to send the remaining passengers to the quarantine place. You can see the passengers sitting from the middle seats to the end of the bus, and also leave the front part empty. We believe that's also a way to protect the driver. The plane touched down in Hong Kong International Airport at around 8:30 a.m. local time. Right now it's around 9:53 a.m. local time. So that's around an hour and a half for the whole process for the passengers who are getting off the plane and finishing all the health check on board. You can see the medics on board is well protected from head to toe. we can see, we believe it's medics. We also finish all the work on board. And they will also doing the final wrap up. So according to the latest information, around 352 Hong Kong residents on the Diamond Princess cruises, among which 55 were confirmed with COVID-19. 3 people were identified as close contacts. So these group of around 88 Hong Kong residents need to stay in Japan for treatment or additional medical observation. So we can see right now the cabin crew, the medics, also right now off the plane. So the disembarking process started from yesterday, and we talk about the passengers who have tested negative for the virus and did not show any symptoms during the quarantine period, such as fever, coughing, fatigue, chest pain, will be allowed to leave the ship. And those who have tested negative but were in cabins with infected people will have to remain on board for additional quarantine. So for the Hong Kong residents, there are around 352 Hong Kong residents on the cruise. So according to the Hong Kong authorities, around 200 Hong Kong residents are willing to take the charter flight provided by Hong Kong government, HKSAR government, back to Hong Kong. But they need to stay in a 2-week quarantine. That's the compulsory quarantine in Hong Kong. And also for the other Hong Kong residents, if they don't need to stay in medical observation or treatment in Japan, they're also actually set free from the cruise, because according to yesterday's disembarking process, the Japanese officials actually allow the people leaving from the cruise can take public transportation and live a normal life. So we can see right now all the passengers on board the first charter flight all got off the plane. There are 8 buses right now sending all the passengers, around 106 passengers, heading to the quarantine places in the new territories. That's around a 1-hour drive. So we didn't see the passengers pick up their luggages. We believe there will be a special arrangement or a dedicated team to help the passengers to claim their luggages and send to the quarantine place. Princess Cruise in Japan and to arrive in Hong Kong. So that's around 106 Hong Kong residents that's disembarked from the cruise and taking off from the Haneda airport. That's around 3:45 local time. Arrived in Hong Kong around 8:30 a.m. this morning. And it's around an hour and a half for all the passengers on board, finish all the health check and getting off the plane, right now heading to the quarantine places for additional 2-week quarantine. So the quarantine place is around a 1 hour drive. That's in the place is called the New Territories. So according to the updated information released this morning by Hong Kong authorities, around 352 Hong Kong residents on board Diamond Prince cruise. 55 were confirmed with COVID-19, 33 were identified as close contacts. This group of 88 people need to stay in Japan for medical observation or treatment. So we have seen today around 106 Hong Kong residents arrived in Hong Kong by the first charter flight dispatched by Hong Kong HKSAR government, and we also expect another charter flight taking off from Haneda Airport in Japan, arrived in Hong Kong later today or earlier tomorrow morning. We talk about all the passengers if they can get on board of the charter flight, which means they have tested negative for the virus. So according to Hong Kong authorities, the quarantine places were provided with daily necessities, food, drinks, and the quarantine staff will take their temperature every day and also have medics work 24/7 to help the people in quarantine and also monitor their health condition. By doing so, it is helped to maximize protect the Hong Kong public and also the people in quarantine. So we talk about that 2-week quarantine in Hong Kong is compulsory. And also according to a press conference given by the chief executive Carrie Lam, the dispatched 2 airplanes if needed. The Hong Kong HKSAR government will also send more charter flights to take the Hong Kong residents and Chinese nationals back to China. So just now we've seen 8 buses taking the 106 passengers off the airplane heading to the quarantine places. And we talk about the charter flights actually is for free to all the passengers, and also according to the official website of the Diamond Princess cruise, the company will refund all the fares to the guests, and also for the expenses incurred in the additional quarantine time, that also will refund all the charges. And we also, the Hong Kong government sent a large group of Hong Kong police to escort the buses to the quarantine places. we talk about is nearly 2 hours spent in the airport for the passengers to go through the whole process, the onboard health checking and getting on the different buses. We talk about actually for each bus, the passengers now sit very closely to each other, and they sit started from the middle row to the end of the buses and leave enough space at the front to make sure the drivers are safe. The original schedule for the first charter flight should depart Tokyo's Haneda Airport at 1:45 a.m. local time, but actually the flight delayed for 3 hours because the Hong Kong government also, with the support of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or PRC, Chinese Embassy in Japan, and also the Japanese authorities, we would like to take as many as possible Hong Kong residents on board. So the original number of the passengers just 50, but right now we can see we have 106 passengers arrived in Hong Kong. So it's around 2 hours after the airplane touched down in Hong Kong International Airport. The whole onboard health check process took around an hour and a half. So the whole process was conducted in a quite orderly manner. And we can tell the passengers, although they suffered a lot under a big stress in their two-week quarantine on the cruise, but still can see from their smell, they're waving their hands to the media, still they relieve a little bit. Right now from our live coverage, you can see the buses right now leaving the airport. So there in total 8 buses are bringing our 106 residents heading to the quarantine places in New Territory. That's around a 1 hour drive. So we believe around noontime, all the passengers will arrive at the quarantine place. So according to the Hong Kong authorities, the quarantine place is well organized and also provide the daily necessities to the people, the passengers. So we talk about 8 buses carrying 106 passengers, which means for each bus that's around 13 passengers. And we look at for each bus, we also have the quarantine staff also on the bus. And the Hong Kong police also sent a large number of police officials to escort the buses to the quarantine places. So we talk about actually all these group of passengers, they get off from the cruise directly to the buses provided by the embassies in Japan and heading to the airport. And also when they touched down in Hong Kong, they directly from the aircraft to the buses provided by Hong Kong HKSAR government, and right now heading to the quarantine places. So for the whole process actually is to mitigate the possibility to be exposed to the public, so that also lower the possibility of cross infection. So according to the latest information, around 11 p.m. today, we will have the second charter flight arrived in Hong Kong. So we talk about right now we have 106 Hong Kong residents arrived in Hong Kong. The total number on the cruise of Hong Kong residents around 352. 88 Hong Kong residents have to stay in Japan because either be confirmed as the patient with COVID-19 or identified as close contacts. The rest of the remaining Hong Kong residents will either on the charter flight or continue their plan in Japan. And also the Hong Kong HKSAR government plan to send more charter flight if needed to Japan to evacuate Hong Kong residents back to Hong Kong. And of course, all the passengers off the cruise have to stay in quarantine in Hong Kong. That's the compulsory process, because we know the passengers allowed to leave the cruise, they are negative to the virus and show no symptoms. But it's a hardcore requirement by the Hong Kong HKSAR government, so they have to stay additional 2 weeks in quarantine. So started from yesterday, around 500 passengers from the Diamond Princess cruise ship who have tested negative for the novel coronavirus. This embarked on Wednesday morning in Japan's Yokohama city, and that process is a continuous effort. So it started from yesterday, and I hope the entire process can be finished tomorrow. And we talk about Hong Kong sent 2 chartered flights to Japan to evacuate the Hong Kong residents and also the other Chinese nationals. And the United States already sent 2 charter flights to take around the 400 U.S. citizens back to the United States. And right now they are in quarantine in 2 different Air Force bases in the United States. And also according to our knowledge, the Australia, Canada also sent their charter flight to Japan to pick up their nationals as well. So yesterday, according to the information released by the Japanese authorities, the newly confirmed cases was 79 on the cruise, out of which 68 actually with no symptoms showed. So authorities finished all the health check on the 311 guests and cruise members. 621 were confirmed with COVID-19. That also makes Japan the highest number outside China. Right now, the total number of confirmed cases in Japan is 695, out of which 621 were the confirmed cases on the cruise. So according to our latest information, on the February 18th, the infection rate on the cruise was as high as 14.6%. Right now, the authorities in Japan also conduct investigation to find out why the number increased so fast. And one of the reasons said by the experts is because of the cruise, the whole environment actually is a perfect place for virus to spread because it's a closed off environment, and also the air ventilation is also not good enough. And also we talk about on the cruise, there are two systems for air ventilation. One is internal one is external. If the cruise only open the internal air ventilation, then actually that's create a ideal environment for the virus to spread. And also according to the World Health Organization emergency program, they're saying the environment on the cruise actually is good for the virus to spread, and we can see there are a lot of the cases number confirmed and in a double digit starting from this week. So this morning we have seen the first charter flight sent by Hong Kong government and taking 106 Hong Kong residents back to Hong Kong, and all of them will be in 2-week quarantine in new territories in Hong Kong. And another charter flight dispatched by Hong Kong government expect to arrive in Hong Kong later today or earlier tomorrow. Expect to take off from Haneda Airport in Japan at around 11 p.m. local time. And we talk about actually this large group of evacuees require a great effort behind all this coordination work. So it's involved the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of PRC and also the Chinese Embassy in Japan, as well as Hong Kong HKSAR government. According to the press conference given by Chief Executive Carrie Lam, actually Hong Kong HKSAR government sent 2 groups of working force to Japan and involved a cross-functional team, including officials from the Immigration Department, the Hospital Authority, the Ministry of Health. So all of them work heartily and with the help from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of PRC and also the Chinese Embassy, and work with Japanese authorities to make sure we can bring as many as possible Hong Kong residents back to Hong Kong. That is why you can see the original number is just 50 passengers of Hong Kong residents off the cruise and can be on board the first charter flight depart from Haneda Airport at 1:45 a.m. local time and arrived in Hong Kong. That's the original plan. But right now you can see we have around 160. That's more than doubled the number. Arrived in Hong Kong. The airplane, the first charter flight, actually wait for additional 3 hours to pick additional number of the Hong Kong residents. Right now they arrived safely in Hong Kong, and we hope they can have a very, very safe quarantine time, make sure they are all healthy and no symptoms shown, and then they can go back home and feel relief. Although we see they were smiling to the media, waving their hands, we can tell they actually suffer a really hard time on the cruise for the previous 2 weeks. That's the quarantine period on the cruise. It's really a hard time for all of them, mentally and physically. Finally, they arrived in Hong Kong by the charter flights, although they will, of course, stay in quarantine. That's a compulsory method right now going on in Hong Kong, but we can tell they relieved a little bit because Hong Kong, finally, they're back home. Of course, they cannot really see their family members right away, but we believe after 2 weeks quarantine, everything will be fine, and they will for sure spend more quality time with their family members. And thank you for watching.